Okay. Hi everyone. I'm good. I'm trying from my phone to see if that makes any difference. Let's see if that makes any difference. Okay, I'm seeing one viewer, but I'm not sure who it is. So give a little wave if you can. We're actually trying this. We're trying this. What? This is like what? Take six? No, no, maybe not take six, but we take three. So I'm trying it from my phone to see if that helps change. All right. So I'm seeing me adding Mr. Moraine. And it's connecting. Oh my goodness. Thank goodness. Maybe my iPad. But thank goodness. Hi, Mr. Moraine. Thank you so much for
Hi,
joining me.
yes.
You can hear me?
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm hearing
I'm
you.
hearing you perfectly.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
good.
Okay,
So
good.
let me like start over. So hi everyone. So this month, September, is PCOS Awareness Month. And so I wanted to start this series to first of all to share a bit about my PCOS journey and my story. Um, and also to share the wisdom of other people that I've come across who has a wealth of knowledge on different areas. And a couple of weeks back, I met this gentleman virtually who has a wealth of knowledge on how our local herbs can help with the symptoms of PCOS. So, if you have PCOS or you know somebody who has polycystic ovarian syndrome, you would know that they tend to be put on medication such as birth control, metformin, and those sort of things to help deal with these symptoms. So we're always looking for, at least for me, I've always been looking for more natural ways to deal with these symptoms. Of course, you have to try to eat as healthily as you can and exercise, but it's not to have something else to kind of give you that little extra oomph to deal with it is always helpful. So that's why I really wanted to have Mr. Moraine here tonight to talk about the different things that he knows and his expertise in ethnobotany. I hope I'm saying that correct. Um, and traditional herbs, as he's an ethnobotanist and traditional healer. So just welcoming him and thanking him so much for the patience for waiting to try to figure out what tech issues we were having. And now he's here and he can share his knowledge. So thank you and welcome, Mr. Maureen. How are you tonight?
I'm fine. Thanks for inviting me to participate in your session.
Oh no, that's not.
Are you hearing
Yes,
me?
hearing you great. Anybody?
Okay, great. Yes, I said thanks very much for inviting me to participate in your session and share my experience with your viewers.
Yes.
And I also have a group on Facebook called Tizan de Lalaha.
Mhm.
Tizan de Lalaha is one of the products I recommend for women with polycystic ovaries. So I believe some people from the group are probably viewing as well.
Oh, that's great. Also, well, since we're,
Yeah.
I'll probably keep that question for later because as you mentioned, Tizan, I have a question about that as well. So okay, so I'll just get started into our discussion. So what I wanted to ask firstly is what exactly is ethnobotany? ethnobotany, and how did you become interested in that field? No pun intended.
Right, that's okay. Yeah. Well, ethnobotany is a seemingly big word that means with a very simple meaning. Ethno has to do with human beings, people, and botany has to do with plants. So an ethnobotanist is someone who studies the use of plants by human beings.
Okay.
And plants can be used for many purposes, for medicine, for handicraft, for dyes, for food, you name it, construction, and so on. So I focused on many different aspects. The medicinal plants are just one dimension to the many aspects of the studies I do on plants which we have growing in the Caribbean and other parts of the world as well.
Oh, that's quite interesting.
So that's a definition. Sorry?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's a simple definition. And in terms of how I came about that journey, I grew up in a tradition. Many of my ancestors, several generations of my ancestors were either midwives or traditional healers. And I followed in their footsteps in that respect. And I also attended University of the West Indies, where I studied botany and zoology and chemistry and biochemistry and so on, before eventually focusing mainly on botany as a graduate student. And sorry, in terms of my first degree, I should say rather.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started my master's, and I had to choose, as it happened at the time, I decided to choose between doing my master's or focusing on the herbal medicines because I had started making medicines and treating people before I started doing my master's, and I had to make a choice, you know. And I remember it was very interesting because there's a young man back then who was just 15 years old, going on 16. I remember we had a conversation, you know, he was kind of kicking on me. Because he's telling me, you know, like you're starting to do your masters. You're going to waste time doing a masters, you know. Why don't you just be a bushmaster, you know? And it was a kind of joke between us. But one thing I've learned over the years is that, you know, sometimes God can speak to anybody to give you direction.
True.
And as that young man spoke, are you all hearing me?
Yes.
You all hear me?
Yes, hearing you fine.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I was saying, as the young man spoke to me that evening, I was in a room, I remember it very clearly. It was as if God was speaking to me through this young man. You know, so I actually, due to a variety of circumstances, I decided to drop out of the master's program at that time and just focus on making medicine and documenting the use of our botanical traditions and so on. And that's where it started. No, well, that was the way it started. I had been actually doing this many years before. I was doing this while I was on campus. Even before I was on campus, I was already making medicines for people and documenting our botanical traditions. I just became more focused upon it at that point instead of doing my master's. Because my master's would have been on a similar topic, but more ecological work.
Right.
And I've never stopped. That's, you know, that's it. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay. So you had a passion for it for a very long time, it sounds like.
Yes, I did. In fact, I always remember when I was on campus, there's a time when I was offered a scholarship in chemistry. And, you know, I had to really make a tough decision because I could have taken up the scholarship. I would have had the money to help see me through campus. But I really didn't like the chemistry that much, you know. I never failed chemistry from high school. I never failed chemistry.
Right.
I remember at when I did A levels, I think there were just 3 students who passed chemistry, and I was one of them. But I never had a love for chemistry the way I had a love for botany. So I decided to see that scholarship, and I'm taking up that scholarship, you know. I will just stick with my botany, you know. So yes, so there has always been that passion, right? And you know, my entire family, you know, like even all my brothers and my sisters, we all love plants in some form or fashion,
Yes.
right? So that passion has always been there.
Well, that's so good. I have to tell you, chemistry used to be one of my favorites of the sciences, but for some reason, it didn't like me back as much. I never failed.
Okay.
I never failed it, but I always did better in physics than in chemistry for some reason. So I can kind of slightly
Yeah.
sympathize. Um, But
Well, what happened to me, I had a kind of, I never saw myself as a brilliant chemistry student,
right,
but I took botany for granted. I mean, like I knew everything. These are things growing around me, plants growing around me. I'm seeing how they're moving and all of these things, seeing how they're growing and all that. With the chemistry, it was more theoretical,
right.
right? And
The theory would change up,
as much as sorry,
and the theory changes up.
I couldn't experiment with chemistry. I couldn't observe things the same way in the world with chemistry the way I could observe them in botany. And the other thing is, I had a little fear for chemistry, so I used to really apply myself to study chemistry. I didn't have to study botany.
Mhm.
I used to pass botany just, easily. In fact, on one occasion, I failed some botany classes because I kind of took them for granted even.
Yeah.
But I never failed chemistry. In my first year on campus, I got the second highest mark in chemistry. Nobody believed that.
Yeah.
Because like all March, April before our final exams, which were in June, I was getting like 23 marks out of 100 in chemistry and all kind of thing. And when exams came around, I got 90 something in chemistry,
Right.
So I applied myself, but I never liked the subject in the same way as I love botany and I love plants and I love being in nature,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So
It's wonderful.
I I took that decision.
Oh, I just saw Nandita. She asked who was our guest tonight. She missed the beginning. So Nandita and anybody who else who joined in a little late. Tonight we have a very special guest. It's ethnobotanist and traditional healer, Mr. Francis Morean. And of course, as you were hearing him speaking, he has such a passion for this topic. And so we're just like trying to get the knowledge from him tonight about it. So Mr. Morin, what exactly made you interested in polycystic ovarian syndrome in particular, or was it something that you kind of stumbled upon, or what was your experience?
Okay, I wouldn't say stumbled upon. It's a very interesting situation actually. I'll go back a bit. I first began making medicines for people around 1979. I think in 1979 I made my first bottle of medicine for anyone,
Wow.
right? And in those early days, I used to make medicine mainly for people with asthma, children with asthma and so
Yes.
on. And then eventually I started business and I started again focusing mainly on medicines for asthma. And I also had lots of herbs for like general cleansers, well, not herbs so much. I made more products for general cleansing and so on.
Hmm.
But many of the women who used my general cleanser, they had like fibroids and cysts and so on, and they were trying to get pregnant and so on. And many of them got pregnant. Some of them got pregnant, and sometimes they wanted to eat off my head because, like, let's say somebody came to me for something for a clean out, just a general clean out because they might have like a fibroid
Hmm.
and not planning to get pregnant. And then they get pregnant, and they didn't want to have a baby at the time, So some women were very annoyed at me. I remember, I remember there's a particular time in 1994. I went to London
Hello.
around December, sometime in December. No, I came back sometime just before Christmas.
Right.
And soon after I came back, a lady came to my office and her belly was big. And she said to me, "Look what your medicine did to me." And I turned to her and I said, "Oh my
I
God,
think
you
the
are swollen."
medicine.
Huh?
I think it was a little more than the medicine.
Well, yes, you're quite right. But I thought that something had gone wrong. I thought something, the medicine had caused something to happen to cause her to be swollen like that.
Right.
So I was scared. I was wondering, I mean, what could have caused that? Nothing in the medicine should have caused that. And this lady's telling me, look at what your medicine did to me.
Hmm.
So I said, oh my God, you're swollen. And then she said to me, oh my God, I'm swollen. I'm not swollen. I'm a few months pregnant. Well, at that time I was relieved. But she didn't want to have a baby,
Mhm.
right? She didn't want to have a baby. So what happened, like in the beginning, I had lots of experiences like that. I remember like sometimes I'd meet people in the streets. I remember once there was a car park next to my office. And as I was walking by, this lady took out this baby. And she um put the baby by the car window. And she said, look your child. And I was like, look, my child? You know? I was like, what craziness is this? You didn't have no sex. So But what was really happening is that she had used the medicines and she got pregnant, right? And she was just teasing me when she said, look, my child.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering what is going on, because sometimes people can make all kind of accusations about you. So a lot of women were getting pregnant with my products in my early days of making medicines and selling medicines in Arima, which would have been mainly from 1991
Mm-hmm.
and onwards. In December 1991, I started doing business full time.
Right.
But prior to that, for many years, I sold in different places. I sold in marketplaces, Tunapuna, Shagonas, in folk fair, the Best Village folk fair, different little odds and ends, odd things here and there, different little groups. Groups may have activities and I would participate and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But in December 91 is when I really started doing business full time.
Okay.
And there came a point in 1998, I think it was around 1998, September, where I had to make some decisions because a number of people were kind of demanding, putting me under pressure to stop doing business for a variety of reasons. I won't go into the reasons now, but well, I could talk about one aspect of the reason. One of the reasons was that the legislative position colonial legislation concerning herbal medicine. And throughout the British Commonwealth, if you go to India, if you go to Africa, if you go to Australia, almost everywhere where the British had colonies, they enforced their colonial legislation concerning herbal medicines.
Mm-hmm.
So we have been bogged down by those things, and the government hasn't really addressed it.
Okay.
So that was one of the reasons I was being put under pressure, because people felt, well, what you're doing is not legal and this and that and the other. And I got really fed up, and I actually contemplated closing down my business, right? And I was contemplating taking up a scholarship abroad. I was contemplating taking up work abroad and so on. So I actually took a decision. I'm going to close up shop.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this product called Tizan, the Lalaha, and Feminex, these two products, and I decided I'm going to start selling out all that I had. So I began advertising them, and I began to advertise. I began taking out ads in the newspapers, putting up like testimonials from women who had used the products and so on, and began writing articles in the newspapers concerning the ingredients in the medicines, ingredients that women could use for their health, for reproductive health.
Mm-hmm.
So I began publishing these ads, like whole page ads in the newspapers, which I call Herbal Healing for Women.
Yeah.
And I began to advertise the products more than I did before. And a lot of women began to come to me because I was literally trying to sell all the products. But what began to happen is that instead of I selling all the products, the demand for the products grew so much that I had to make more and more, right? And then in 1999, I had a program which I call Anari 99. That was I had for an entire year, from April 1999 to April 2000, I had a series of events all over the country, Trinidad Tobago, where I gave lectures, I gave awards to traditional healers. And one of the things I began doing was publishing a newsletter called the Herb Star. I published the first edition of the Herb Star in April 1999 to commemorate World Earth Day, right? And a main part of that, my focus was women's health, so I began to do more things about the polycystic ovaries, talk about the fibroids and all these things. And it just took off again at a different level again. And that went on for many years. I've had many ups and downs in between that period, but I've treated literally thousands of women with polycystic ovaries over the years. It is a very rampant condition for a variety of reasons. And I stayed with it. I just manufacture about 5 products. I mean, people may want other products. Sometimes I may send them to other people, other herbalists and so on. Mm-hmm. And I have just focused on reproductive health in men and women. And a large part of that has been polycystic ovaries.
Okay.
So that is a sort of synopsis of my involvement with polycystic ovarian syndrome and women.
I'm seeing one of the viewers right now say they actually remember your ads, the ads that you referred to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been advertising for me. And then I do a pullout. Well, I told you I began doing a pullout called the Herbal in April of 1999, and over the years I've done like 90, 89 or 90 editions so far.
Okay.
I haven't done any for a couple of years because I hardly do any advertising. I think the last edition I did was in 2015. Sometime late in 2015, I did a workshop in Tobago at Ravenel's. That's a hotel in Bonacord area.
Yeah.
That was the last workshop I did, and I was on polycystic ovaries actually.
Okay.
And I always say, no, I mean, a lot of women tend to have to do surgery and all sorts of things for polycystic ovaries. And my basic view is that in the majority of instances in the Caribbean, where women have been having to do surgery and take all these drugs and all these metformin and so on, in the majority of instances, they don't really need to if they can discipline themselves with their diet and with exercise. They're not even required to use my medicines. They can deal with it mainly through diet and exercise. That's my personal view. Right? There are exceptional circumstances where women may need support, and I see the T's and the Lala and the
Okay. So then would you say that the main thing that women with PCOS need comes to you for relief from is fertility issues, or are there other specific symptoms that they look to your advice and herbs for?
Well, I would say the majority of women who have polycystic ovaries who come to me, I would say probably about 75% to 80% of them who come, they come trying to get pregnant as well.
Okay.
Right? Because some women may have polycystic ovaries and they not bother with it too much, They live with the inconvenience, the irregular periods, they live with the acne, the unwanted body hair, they live with the weight gain. When the weight gain when they begin to put on too much weight and it becomes problematic, they may come to me even if they're not trying to get pregnant.
Right.
But the majority of them come because they're trying to get pregnant or because they may have excessive bleeding. Right? So if a woman has excessive bleeding, which is one of the symptoms that women could experience with polycystic ovaries, many of them also come to me for that reason, although they may not be trying to get pregnant.
Right. Okay. So what are the specific local herbs you recommend to treat PCOS symptoms?
Okay. They're quite a large number. But before trying to explain what are the local herbs I'd recommend, I need to say a couple of things concerning polycystic ovaries. So you would understand when I begin to talk about the herbs, you will have a better understanding as to why I recommend them. Right?
Yeah.
So I say a bit about the polycystic ovaries itself, and I would say a bit about how polycystic ovarian syndrome, how it manifests in the Trinidad and Tobago society, and why it also manifests in a certain way. Right? So I just want to talk a little bit about that before I actually talk about the herbs, so you'll get a better understanding.
Sure, no problem.
Now, let's take.
Sure, no problem.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let's take. I'm looking at your face, for example, right? I'm asking this question, you don't have to answer, but I'm just asking this question, so I'll put certain things in context. Now, I'm looking at your photograph. Do you call yourself a Douglas?
Yes. Yes.
Right, so you consider yourself a Douglas, right?
Yes.
So you have some East Indian roots, right?
I do.
Right, okay, good. Now, I'm a lot who have polycystic ovaries, they are East Indians. And I'll explain a bit why that is so in a little while, right? Polycystic ovarian syndrome is what you call a metabolic disorder. It's very much like diabetes in many respects. And that's one of the reasons why the metformin, which is given to women who have polycystic ovaries, is the same drug that's used for diabetes, treating diabetes, right? Now, I need to keep me in check. Like how we started, you told me we could start from 8 and end at 9.
Well, we started like about 20.
But we have so much.
Yeah, I think.
Right, so you have to kind of let me know, give me a little heads up as to when you plan to stop, so at least I could cover certain ground in the session this evening.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, go ahead.
Right? Yeah. Okay, so polycystic ovaries is what you call a metabolic disorder. It's a disorder which is connected to the what you call the lowered insulin resistance in women. In other words, they cannot metabolize their insulin levels, or their insulin metabolism is not in proper order, and that causes lots of complications. It's what you call it's the PCOS. As I mentioned when I did the Zoom session, I don't know if you had been there for the full Zoom session, but I had indicated that wherever you see the word syndrome in a health disorder, and PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome, wherever you see the word syndrome as part of a disorder, it means that there are a multitude of symptoms, or at least multiple symptoms involved. Yeah. Right? The words, if you break down the words polycystic ovarian syndrome, it's poly meaning many, cystic meaning cyst, ovarian meaning related to the ovaries, and syndrome. So it's a syndrome where there are many cysts, polycystic, many cysts in the ovaries. And it's a syndrome where you have symptoms like some of you have already mentioned, like unwanted body hair, excessive weight gain, right? Irregular periods, hormonal imbalance, tendency towards miscarriages, high incidence of miscarriages in the first trimester. Did I mention acne?
Yes.
I'm not sure if I mentioned acne, but irregular periods, pardon me, very heavy bleeding, sometimes during periods, sometimes no. The term that is used to describe that is really anovulation, ANOVULATION, which means absence of ovulation. Whenever you see the word an before a medical term, in most cases it relates to the absence of, or like you see like amenorrhea, that's where you have a woman doesn't have a period, right? Amenorrhea. So with polycystic ovaries, women may have amenorrhea. That's a common symptom of polycystic ovarian syndrome. In most instances, women who have polycystic ovarian syndrome, they do not ovulate regularly, and all of these symptoms are connected to the lowered insulin resistance. In a normal woman, and I don't like to use the word normal woman or normal man, yeah, but in the stereotypical textbook kind of situation, a woman would have two ovaries, a left ovary and a right ovary. She'd have a left fallopian tube and a right fallopian tube. And every month, she would produce a mature egg. 1 month on the left side, in the theoretical situation. Next month on the right side, every 28 days. Again, that's the textbook kind of situation. But it actually varies a lot. Some women may have a very regular period, which may just last like 23 days, every 23 days, every 25 days. Some women may have a regular period, which may be every 35 days. And very often, these women may think that something is wrong. Because, if you go to a gynecologist, the gynecologist will tell you, well, your period should be coming every 28 days. And sometimes the gynecologists, and they even give women drugs to try to so-called normalize their periods when they already have a normal period, but just the pattern is not the 28 days. Okay, so theoretically, your body produces one egg on the left side 1 month, another egg on the right side the next month. That's in the respective ovaries. Mm-hmm. And in women with polycystic ovaries, that does not happen. It doesn't happen like that. In the ovaries, well, in fact, in every woman, theoretically, every woman has what they call an egg reserve. And by the egg reserve, they're really related to the follicles, which produce the eggs and from which the eggs are released. So every month, theoretically, a mature egg should be released on one side of the ovary, and that egg is released. It travels down the fallopian tube. If a woman has sexual intercourse during that period, or within a short few days after, or even before, sometimes, because the sperm can actually survive. The sperm and the egg can survive longer than a lot of what scientists could be telling us sometimes. Sorry, I got distracted a bit there by a message somebody sent me. Sorry. Yeah, so I'm saying that if the person doesn't get pregnant, the lining of the uterus is shed. And that's what is called a period, right? Or menses. Normally, each month, the lining of when the egg is being released, right, as the course of the 28-day, so-called 28-day cycle, you have what is called a proliferative phase, where the lining of the uterus begins to thicken in preparation for the implantation of a fertilized egg. But if fertilization doesn't take place, you cannot, there's no conception. In other words, the lining of the uterus is shed. So there's an expression used by some doctors that a woman's menstrual period is the weeping tears of an unfulfilled womb, in the sense that the womb is preparing itself for pregnancy and pregnancy doesn't take place. Right? So that's a kind of philosophical concept in terms of how the period is seen. But really the period comes about when there's no fertilization. Now, with polycystic ovaries, due to the multiple factors involved, the hormonal imbalance, there is an excessive production in women of what is traditionally described as male hormones. Now, I don't like to use the word male hormones too much, and I don't like, you'll hear about female hormones. I don't like to use those words too much because it is not so much as if they are male hormones or if they are female hormones. The hormones I'm going to talk about, men have these hormones. Okay, like there are hormones like progesterone and estrogen, which are typically considered female hormones. But men also have those hormones, just in different levels. And then there's testosterone, which is typically considered a male hormone, but women also have testosterone quite naturally. Some women may have more testosterone than others, and that will affect them in different ways. Now, the higher the testosterone level in women, the more likely to lead to a situation where a woman would not be ovulating, right? It's a very complex, there are a number of complex biochemical pathways which would account for that. I mean, if you all want, I could show you some of these things on my screen, right? But the fact of the matter is that once the testosterone levels begin to increase in a woman, and that is one of the things that actually happens when the insulin resistance is lowered, a woman begins to produce more testosterone and less progesterone than, these are just two of the fundamental changes, less progesterone than normal. And this results in a situation where instead of a mature egg being produced every month, she produces several cysts, because multiple follicles are developing at the same time, and they are not being released, so they begin building up under if you want to call it the outer surface of the ovaries. They begin building up there, and then they build up, they swell like a lemon skin almost. You need a rough skin lemon?
Mm-hmm.
You all there?
Yes.
Right, you know what a rough skin lemon is like?
Yes.
So it has that kind of rough skin. I mean, it's just giving a kind of a perspective as to what an ovary would look like when all these follicles are developing and the eggs are not being released, right? Now, that in turn creates more complications in terms of the balance of hormones in the system. But the consequence of all of these changes would be the unwanted body hair, the acne, the irregular periods, and of course the difficulty in conceiving. Because if you're not producing eggs, how can you conceive, right? So because of that, it is important for women who have polycystic ovaries to try to keep their hormones, to try to keep their hormones in balance and to try to ensure that they don't have a disruptive biochemical system. So any herb that would actually enhance your insulin resistance would be helpful. And I'll put it differently, any herb that is helpful in the treatment of diabetes would be very helpful for women with polycystic ovaries. And I can mention simple household things, like a simple thing as cinnamon, for example. A lot of women may have polycystic ovaries, and if they use a lot of spicy foods, a lot of cinnamon in their foods, it would help them. If they use a lot of turmeric, a lot of curry, as simple as it may seem, that would help a whole lot for women with polycystic ovaries, right? If women with polycystic ovaries can keep their weight down, that will help to break some of the vicious circles within the whole complex biochemical reactions. So I tend to advise women that they can use, I'm talking about herbs, but I'm also talking about diet, right?
Yeah.
So as I said, diet is very important. So simple things like, let's say, Christophine. Christophine is very low in calories, and Christophine is very filling. So if women were to use a lot of Christophine, in preference to rice and flour and so on, pardon me, it will be easier for them to keep their health in check and to reverse the process, not just the process, but the various processes involved in polycystic ovarian syndrome. Just by using simple things like turmeric, by using curry, by using, as I said, Christophine, even breadfruit.
Right.
I have, from my observations, I have found that women who use a lot of breadfruit, they're not as prone to polycystic ovaries as women who may be using flour or rice, right? So those are simple lifestyle changes that I recommend. Corylli, most of you know corylli, baji, watercress. All of these things are very good. Um, there are a lot of debates as to whether corylli, and there's also wild corylli. You could do the wild corylli as well. Um, the wild corylli may actually be even maybe better for you than the corylli itself in terms of helping to deal with the polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Okay.
So once you begin to lose weight, once you begin to keep your weight in check, you would begin to undo the damage from polycystic ovarian syndrome. Because what happens with polycystic ovarian syndrome is that your whole body metabolism becomes slower. So let's say two women have the same weight. Let's say two women are weighing 150 pounds and they have the same height. And they both going to the gym and they both doing the same routines every day, every week. The woman who is suffering from polycystic ovaries would have much more difficulty in losing weight than the other woman. Okay, so that's why I talk about the discipline, because it takes a little extra discipline. Sometimes, you can be trying to get rid of the problem and you're getting fed up, you get frustrated, you throw in the sponge, right? Now, when we come to now turmeric is a herb, but it's also a food, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the ingredients used in preparing curry, a lot of the jeera and all these things, those are also very helpful in reversing polycystic ovarian syndrome. But then there are other herbs that I can recommend, things like zevapeak. I guess most of you, I don't know how many of you are viewing right now, but maybe you all can indicate whether you all know zevapeak, if you all have ever used it or if you have seen it or tasted it at any time. It would be nice to have some feedback. But zevapeak is a herb I recommend a lot for women with polycystic ovaries. And at this time when everybody has COVID and all that, I'd also strongly recommend it for women. Use zevapeak. You can use small amounts. I mean, it's one of the zevapeak, and both the zevapeak and the turmeric are ingredients I use in the tisane, in making the tisane. There's another herb called treff. That's not very common. If you see it at all, you're seeing it in somebody's garden. And it's a very slow growing herb.
I haven't.
Sometime in the next few days, I will do Somebody's asking a question.
I said I haven't heard of that.
Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
What, Trev?
Yeah.
You haven't but you've heard of Zebra Peak, right?
Yes, I've heard of Zebra.
Right. So I'm seeing Ajay Sebastian is saying, yep, I have. Have you used it, Ajay? Have you used any of these, the Zebra Peak or the Trev? There's another herb called matroot, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's another herb called gully root. All these herbs are very, very good in speeding up your body's metabolism, in improving your body's ability to handle the carbohydrates in your system. And I used those herbs in making the products, the teas and the lalaha, pardon me, and the Feminex. Now, sometime during the next few days, I would probably do a live talking about both the matroot and the Zebra Peak, because sometimes some of these things can be very hard to get, but I have some guys who I sent in the forest a few days ago, and they told me, well, they have the herbs ready for me, and I'll show you all some roots, some of the matroot I'm going to show you all. And the roots I'm going to show you all, these roots are 17 years old. What I mean by that, they're 17 years old. When the plants were planted, it was 17 years ago. What I do, the people who collect herbs from me, quite a lot of men who collect herbs from me, I encourage them to replant the herbs. Because if you don't replant the herbs, especially the roots, and you're only harvesting, a time would come when you won't have any. And the roots that I use are usually very old roots. If the roots are small, pardon me, sorry, if the roots are small and young, they don't have the potency that you would need to deal with some of these conditions, right? So I would do a little live at some stage within the next few days. As I have the herbs in my hand, I'll do a little live concerning them.
Yeah.
Right, so these are some of the main herbs that I'd recommend. The cinnamon, the turmeric, the jeera, the matroot, the treff, the Zebra Peak, the gully root. There are others that I would use as well, but these are the main ones, you know, and sometimes people ask me why my products are so expensive. And it's mainly because of the roots I have to collect, I have to use. They take a lot of effort to get them. They don't come that easily.
Yeah.
Right? So
like that.
I'll probably take a couple of questions. Sorry?
Yeah, it sounds like that. I see one of our viewers are saying it's very difficult to get some of the herbs that you're talking about.
Yes.
I know you had mentioned.
Yes, I encourage people. Sorry.
I know you had mentioned on the Zoom call that was pretty interesting to me was the bark of a fat pork tree.
Sorry. Sorry, you're breaking up.
Are you hearing me now?
Well, you haven't said much since.
I was saying that one of the viewers was saying that they are very hard to get some of the herbs that you mentioned. And I recall you had bark of a fat pork tree, which I thought was very interesting because
yes, I mentioned, yeah.
I have fat pork in my yard, but I never knew you could have used the bark.
Right. Yes, I was talking about the fat. Now, I mentioned the fat pork bark, and I mentioned the cashew bark and the mango bark. Now, those don't help you so much in terms of dealing with the polycystic ovaries. I mentioned those because one of the problems women have with polycystic ovaries is the heavy bleeding, right? So if a woman has heavy bleeding, she can use those herbs, the bark of the fat pork or the mango or the cashew to help to stop the bleeding.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, and the what else? Something else I was gonna mention. The cinnamon. The cinnamon will also help to stop the bleeding. Right? Apart from helping to balance the hormones and to lower the insulin, to reduce the problem with the insulin metabolism, the cinnamon also would have to actually stop bleeding. But you have to use it, boil it and drink it kind of lukewarm. Don't drink it while it's hot, right? if you drink it while it's too hot, it could actually worsen the problem. So you drink it. I mean, you boil it, you let it cool, at least let it become lukewarm, and then you can drink it. And it will help with the stopping the bleeding, right? Another important herb I recommend for women with polycystic ovaries is one called wild cane, right? Wild cane is a herb that grows up in the mountains. Well, not in the mountains. I'll be lying by saying that. It grows in South Trinidad. It grows all over the country. It grows all through the oil fields. It grows all through Rio Claro, Miaro. But in the northern range, you find it growing much fatter.
Mm-hmm.
The fatter it is, the more juice it has. And it's the juice from the wild cane, the stems of the wild cane, that you really need to use to help to deal with the polycystic ovaries. You can, if you can get the wild cane, and I'll need to talk a bit more about what the wild cane looks like. But if you can get the wild cane and you peel the wild cane, you can suck the stem. And that actually helps to, it does many different things. Apart from helping to balance the hormones, it also helps to clean the womb. And for women who have polycystic ovaries, who are suffering from terrible acne,
Mm-hmm.
the wild cane, even by itself, the wild cane is one of the things I'd recommend most highly to women with polycystic ovaries. It cleans the womb and cleans the skin in quick time. In fact, a lot of women with polycystic ovaries tend to have a lot of blood clotting. They may have a heavy period or they may have an irregular period, and a lot of clot blood tend to remain in the womb. And women who have that problems are prone to acne
Okay.
troubles. So once you begin to use the wild cane to clean the womb, it almost automatically begins to clean up your skin. Right now, there are many different plants people call wild cane. There's a type of plant that grows along the riversides. Like if you're going to Caroni, St. Helena, if you're going to like all by the Pitch Lake area, Labray, you see guys selling these dried flowers around Christmas time. Very tall stalks of flowers like sugarcane flowers.
Mm-hmm.
That's a plant people call, that's one of the plants people call wild cane. But when I talk about wild cane, I'm not talking about that. You have to bear in mind that there are many plants that have similar local names,
Mm-hmm.
but they are different species.
Okay.
The one that I'm calling wild cane, there are two species that I recommend. One has a red flower like a penis, and it comes sometimes the flowers, well, I shouldn't say a flower, it's a flowering stalk.
Mm-hmm.
And one flower like a little red tube opens along that stalk every day. Just one, in most cases, just one flower along that stalk would open, and a lot of hummingbirds tend to feed on the flowers. But the stalk itself could vary. In some areas, that red stalk can get as long as 16 inches, 18 inches, sometimes as long as almost 2 feet. And sometimes it may be short and stodgy. Sometimes it may get quite thick. Sometimes it may get as much as like 3 inches. No, not much, about 2.5 inches thick. So it varies, but it's very conspicuous because the way it looks like a penis. And very often you'll find the wild cane grows in clumps. If you find one plant in an area, most likely you find other plants. And the leaf is broad and almost leathery. It's not like a grass, it's more like in fact, it is related to the ginger, right? It's a family called the Zingiberaceae. So that's the wild cane, one variety, and then there's another variety that has a trumpet-shaped flower, sort of red, white, and yellow trumpet-shaped flower, something like the flower of what you call lychee, right? I don't know how many of you know the lychee. But it's like a trumpet-shaped flower, essentially, a big trumpet-like flower. And that one actually gets much fatter. If the two plants are growing in the same environment, the white one is normally thicker. So you peel the stem, you can suck the stem, as I said, or if you want, you could cut the stem in small pieces and soak them in a bottle with warm water. And then after they soak for a while, you could drink the water, or you could boil them and drink the water. But that's a very, very good herb for women with polycystic ovaries as well.
Okay.
Right? Those are some of the main. There are other things I recommend, like the papa root, is what I call a male papa root.
Mm-hmm.
The male papa root is the root from a plant that doesn't produce female flowers. It just produces male flowers. right? So that root is very good for women with polycystic as well. Wild coffee root. I don't know how many of you know what wild coffee is. Okay, I'm just seeing a question here. Somebody saying sounds like the wild cane may be good to use after giving birth. Yes, of course. You can. It helps to clean the womb after. All these herbs I'm mentioning, in terms of polycystic ovaries, they are also very good for cleaning the womb after childbirth. For you tend to have a lot of clot blood, a lot of lochia, what you call lochia, in the womb after pregnancy. So these herbs will clean them out as well, right? So I was talking about the wild coffee root, even the cenopods, the cenopods in the what you can get in the pharmacy. Those would also be very helpful because the cenopods help to induce some degree of weight loss, right? Um, so that is also very helpful in terms of women with polycystic ovarian syndrome, right? So those are the main herbs I'd recommend.
So Ajay,
From my experience, the ones that, sorry?
Ajay asked a question when you mentioned the bark. How do you
Uh-huh. Oh, what's the question, please?
how do you prepare the barks, like the fat pork tree bark and those
Oh,
use?
okay. You boil the you boil you well, first of all, you get when you harvest in the back, you can get, like, let's say you get a piece of the back about 12 inches long by not more than 2 inches wide. Because if you cut it back too wide, you will kill the tree, right? If you have to choose one of those tree backs, just one, I'd recommend either the fat pork or the cashew. The mango works well, but not as well as the cashew or the fat pork, right?
Okay.
If you could get all of them and boil them together, well, that's fine. The water gets reddish. In most cases, if you boil any of those tree backs, the water will get a bit reddish in color. And you just drink the water as cooling. You don't drink any juice, right? You just drink that water throughout the day whenever you're thirsty. And that will help to stop the bleeding. Right? But you have to boil it, as I said, right? Boil it very strong, and when the water cools, you drink it. Don't drink it hot. On the whole, if a woman has polycystic ovaries and she has excessive bleeding, I wouldn't advise her to drink too many hot drinks, even in terms of the herbs, And I advise women with polycystic ovaries to stay far, or even with fibroids who have heavy bleeding problems, try to avoid too much pepper, or even whether bird pepper, chili pepper, any hot pepper. Try to avoid too much hot pepper if you're having any excessive bleeding, because those tend to increase your circulation. When you're having any heavy bleeding during polycystic ovaries, you don't want to be increasing your circulation, because that will just complicate things.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any of the herbs that you mentioned that you can't take as often, like in terms of frequency? Like I know you said the one just now that you could
You can or can't. I didn't get the question clearly. Herbs that you can use or cannot use. Plural. I mean, negative or affirmative?
negative that you can't use too often.
In terms of the herbs I mentioned?
Yeah.
Yes, well, the matroot and the treff and the zebra peak and the gully root. Those are very strong herbs, so you don't want to be using those things too regularly. I mean, like, even though I would have a formula in terms of how much I would use in the tisane and so on, I limit it. In most cases, I limit the treatment to 9 weeks. Sometimes women may have polycystic ovaries and they put on a lot of weight. Sometimes I have seen women put on over 100, 150 pounds within like 6 months. Sometimes it can be a really horrible situation.
Yeah.
When that weight gain begins to become a problem, right? And sometimes they may come to me and they want to they want to deal with it and get rid of the weight very quickly. And I advise them it's better they take the herbs for a period, not more than 9 weeks, and then take a break and try to rely more on their foods, diet and exercise. And they can come back later on, and take some more. Because sometimes, I've seen women with polycystic ovaries who are over 300 pounds, bordering on 400 pounds, just due to polycystic ovaries. right? But these herbs are very strong. You don't want to using them on a continual basis like that.
Okay. So, Mr. Morin, where do we get? Well, I know you mentioned that you have some formulas like your tisane, and how is
Uh-huh.
where do we source it, and how different is that from the tisane to bourbon?
Okay. If you want to get it with the products, you can just message me. If you leave me a number, I can call you and we can arrange to have the products delivered to you. If you're in Trinidad and Tobago, that's not hard. If you're outside of Trinidad and Tobago, well then I'll have to send the products to you at FedEx. So you'd have to work out that, right? But you can always send me a number, or if you have a WhatsApp number, we can talk on WhatsApp as the case may be. And the products can be delivered to you. Something else. You asked two questions. You asked another question. I don't think I answered both questions.
Usually, I hear about tisane to
Sorry?
I hear about tisane to
Oh, the tisane,
yeah.
right? Tisane de Dubois. Right, the tisane de Dubois is a cleanser, but the ingredients are mainly chemicals,
Okay.
right? The products I make are local herbs. Well, the only ingredient in my product that's not local is the wild senna. I use small amounts of wild senna in it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's all local herbs, and so it's not chemicals in that sense,
Mm-hmm.
and it's made to work on the glandular system. It focuses on the glandular system. So, for example, a lot of women may have problems with their hormones due to pituitary gland malfunction, or they may have thyroid malfunctions, right? Apart from the malfunctions of the ovaries. And these products work on the glandular system to enhance the functioning of these organs. They also work on the cellular system, right? Because these products actually work, they penetrate the cell membranes and they actually detoxify from within this at the cellular level, which is important for your overall health,
Yeah.
right? Um, so those are fundamental differences in terms of between this product and the teas and the lalaha. I mean, sorry, and the teas and the dubo.
Bourbon, yes. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Morin, for you clearly have a wealth of knowledge of all of these things. So I do hope to hear more from you with your life. So you let me
Okay, well,
share it as well.
yes.
Um
Well,
and
we could do another session sometime.
yeah, that would be great. And like pictures as well. Because for me, like you call a lot of things that I'm sure if I talk to my grandparents, they would know about. But
Right, yes. Yeah, well, I could always show photographs on my screen and just focus the camera on the screen, right? So
yeah.
you could see photographs of the plants. So in any case, I have photographs of all these plants on Facebook as well, eh? So it's just
Okay.
a matter of finding. I have loads and loads of photographs of all sorts of things on Facebook. Right. I could do another session with you sometime, but it would have to be after the 25th of September. I'll be very
That's not
busy. I mean, I don't know,
yeah.
you must be very special. When I say you must be very special, I don't really know you. And I really, when you asked me to do it, I just felt comfortable doing it. I don't really do these things. I
Oh,
felt comfortable doing it. And I'm very busy these days. So I decided I'll put aside the time and do it with you. But I guess maybe you ask in such a direct. I guess I like people who are direct, and you were very direct, so that maybe
oh.
helped.
I
Um,
was trying because
but
I know it was very loud.
sorry.
I was trying to be very nice, to because I know it was very last
Well, you were
minute.
straightforward enough. You were
Okay.
straightforward enough. I like people who are straightforward. Um, but I'll be very tied up between now and the 25th of September. I expect to be quite tied up. So I don't like the Zoom sessions. I won't be doing any. I don't plan. Well, I mean, I will talk about the matrit and the treff when I get and the Zero when I get when I get the herbs. I send the guys to collect in the forest for me.
Hmm.
I will talk a bit about those, but I don't plan to do too many lives until later down in the month or early October.
All right. So that is noted. So I'll contact you directly again
Yes.
around that time.
Yeah.
So thank you so much
Yeah.
for sharing so much with us. I'm sure everybody who is on found it very interesting. I found it interesting myself. And if you have anything else you want to share before you leave, you can.
Um, I can't. I'm the kind of person I tend to function better when I'm responding to questions actually. Yeah? But I mean, I often tell people I could talk wholly on any topic. I could talk I could talk for an hour or 2 hours about one plant sometimes,
Yeah.
based on the various aspects of the plants. So I function best when I'm responding to a question,
Yes.
as distinct from just talking. I can ramble a lot sometimes too. And I do like to ramble too much, although I find myself doing it.
That when you have so much
But
knowledge,
but
when you have a wealth of knowledge, so it's quite.
but yeah, but when I'm presented with questions,
Hmm.
it forces me to stay close to the question. I mean, ramble a bit still, eh? Because there's always so much other things I could talk about putting into the question.
Yes.
Because the question may connect to other things,
Yes.
right? That's why, for example, when you ask like what herbs I could use, oh, there was something I wanted to talk about, but we'll talk about that next time concerning why East Indian women
Right. The history.
tend to be so prone. East Indian women or women who have East Indian ancestors, Douglas, and so on and so on,
Hmm.
why they are so prone to polycystic ovarian syndrome. I'll talk about that when we do the next session.
Okay, great. Yes, we
Right?
history and everything.
I will explain why it's like that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again, Mr. Morean, and thank you everyone for joining us. If you have any questions, you could leave it in the comments as well. I could always direct them to him and get back the answers for you. And yeah, so everybody keep safe, keep well in this time. And just as he's saying, it does come down making the right decisions. And I know for me and for other women who have PCOS, it is a challenge to keep the discipline, because it can be a lot on your mental health as well. But if we can use some of the advice that he gave us here tonight, if we could, it will help to us to deal and manage the symptoms a bit better. So again, thank you, Mr. Moraine, and everybody have a good night.
Okay, thanks very much.
You're welcome. Okay, bye.